crops are GMO crops. So that those GMOs are causing the bees to go extinct. We've already lost 90% of the wild bee populations, according to the statistics. And this is causing, the wild bees going extinct is causing colony collapse disorder. Okay, the bees cannot find their way back to the hive. And we already mentioned the fertilizer from all the feed crops, killing all the birds and all sea life in the ocean for hundreds of square miles.
All right, let's get Peter's reaction, Neil, to some of this. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, I can't argue with any of that. He's absolutely correct. It's amazing that in Central America and other areas, rainforests are cut down to grow grass, to grow beef, to put in McDonald's burgers. We are literally cutting down the forest for hamburgers. I mean, that sounds ridiculous, and it's a reality.
Stupidity at its best, huh?
It's just, if you think about how many tons of grass it takes for a cow, and then you think about how much food could come out of that grass for wheat. I mean, how many people could be fed on an acre of wheat versus an acre of grassland that supports one or two cows? It's just all about trophic levels. It is, I think, as we move forward, the eating of meat is going to be more and more destructive to nature on this planet.
Peter, what's your vision of the planet 50 years from now?
Well, unfortunately, one of my visions happened just a year ago. I went to Papua New Guinea, and I was there to study coral reefs. And I had to go through the city of Port Moresby, which is right on the equator. I mean, right on the equator. And there's hundreds of thousands of people living in Port Moresby. Papua New Guinea populace is centered there. The reef is right up against the shore, so what reefs do when they're close to land is they're like little moats. And so you put a wall around the city of Port Moresby. Tens of thousands of people live in stilt houses on the shore that is abutting this moat. And so because they have no sewage systems, they have holes in the floor. So you've got these houses with a hole as human waste goes down into the moat. There's no circulation of seawater there. It is always 95 degrees, so 90% humidity. There's no wind because you are at exactly at the equator in the Doldrums. And that to me became the vision of what this planet could be. It's kind of like a Christmas carol. The ghost of Christmas future if we don't change things around.
East of the Rockies, Jeff's with us in Cleveland, Ohio. Hey, Jeffrey, go ahead.
Good morning, gentlemen. George, I wrote you an email earlier about a little synchronicity that I had where I was watching the Nova episode about the right whales.
Yes. I got that.
And they were saying in there that whales that used to forage around the Bay of Fundy have moved north to the Bay off of Nova Scotia. I can't remember where it is now. Is it all right? Can I sing a couple of bars from Ode to Big Blue? This is about the blue whale.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, the oceans of the world were the home of Big Blue. He was the greatest monster that the world ever knew. And the place that he left us was the waters to the west. And the oceans of the world were the home of Big Blue. Now the gray whales are run and the sperm is almost done. The finbacks and the greenland rights have all passed and gone, but they've been taken by the men for the money they could spend. And there never was a man who could take a pen to Big Blue. So every time I sing that song when I do a live stream on Facebook, I always get choked up because
it's very appropriate.
And because they're dying and everything. And I wanted to ask you, speaking of songs, for the emerging artists segment.
Yeah.
Are you looking for all original stuff, or are you looking for, can you do covers too?
No, they can do covers. I'm looking for inexperienced artists. It doesn't matter what they're presenting to us. I mean, I'm not going to put Pat Boone on emerging artists, for example.
Right, I understand. No, I had done an original piece that was called Whale Song, that I used some sounds of the humpback as backing track, and it was picked up for a national podcast.
Good for you.
That was pretty cool. But yeah, I'm really worried about, like the whales. There's 58 species of whales, and a good number of them are in the process of going away. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that because the oceans are warming, they're changing their habitat because they have to go find their food. And their food is moving north because the further south you go, the hotter the water is. And that's also the reason that the sharks are moving up north and, off New York and everything. I think the shark attack just happened recently. It's like the first time in decades that they've had one. And, so unless we get a handle on this climate business, we're not going to have much left on this planet. And, so I want to thank you for everything that you're doing, Peter, to keep bringing attention to this topic. And I will listen to your comments out there. Thank you so much.
Be interesting, Peter, to see what happens with the climate next year, whether it continues to get hotter and hotter, or whether we go into severe cold.
Yeah, that's very unpredictable. But I have to say, George, I've lost track how many times I've been on Coast to Coast, but I've never been serenaded before.
There you go.
It's just the unexpected is always with you, George.
Acapella there, acapella without any music behind it.
It was a nice song, too. It was good.
Not bad at all. Let's talk again about what's the biggest whale out there?
I'm not a complete whale expert or even a partial whale expert. Certainly the blue whales are up there, but I thought that the fin whale, which was as large or larger, not as heavy, but look, so many of your listeners are going to know better than I, and probably you do. I don't know. I know the blues are pretty big. They're certainly, compared to dinosaurs, these are massive animals. So it's a shame to lose them.
What kind of whale was Moby Dick?
Moby Dick had to have been a sperm whale, wasn't it? I mean, just sperm whales are just nasty, and they're
huge.
intelligent. And again, they're big predators. I always thought that you'd have to be way smarter to be a sperm whale because you've got to track down squid, and the squid don't want to get caught. So there's got to be much more thought involved. On the big whales that simply use baleen and are just pushing their way through big plankton fields, I don't think you need a lot of intelligence for that. Certainly communication, keeping the group together, but predators are often very much smarter than herbivores. And I would imagine that if the toothed whales, like the dolphins, are smartest, and probably killer whales smartest of all.
And like you said, maybe back 2,000 years ago, they had extreme heat, but nobody kept records then.
Oh, that's right.
And it wasn't global warming. What could it have been?
Well,
cycle?
We got lots of variations. The ice cores have shown us this, but certainly, and since we have been keeping records, what we're seeing in the last several decades is different. I mean, it's totally different.
Did you hear the story about a scientist beginning to think that gravity is beginning to decompose?
I certainly heard some very interesting things, not so much our gravity decomposing, but about the gravitational aspects of the deep inner Earth. There have been some very strange new studies coming out about deep gravitational waves within the very inner part of the core. I haven't heard that about gravity itself, but the older I get, the stranger things seem. It's perhaps less and less surprising.
What would happen if gravity completely went away? Would we just float off the planet?
We would certainly float off the planet, but again, as long as there's a planet there, there's going to be gravity. So that is not going to be one of our problems. But the bigger problem is going to be if we keep putting gases up in the atmosphere, that are affecting climate over the way that they seem to be. You know, we used to have a lot of hydrogen on planet Earth, but hydrogen's very light, and it did float away. And this is, again, poor Mars not having enough mass to have enough gravity to keep its gases in.
Some scientists are beginning to say if we delete the carbon dioxide or diminish it, we could be creating another problem.
Oh, it'd be worse. Oh, yeah, this is a hilarious thing that people don't understand. Right now, our biggest problem seems to be is way too much carbon dioxide, but if you made every bit go away, we would all be dead in a very short period of time. We'd be dead from starvation because without carbon dioxide, you're not going to have photosynthesis, so therefore no plants. You don't have plants, you don't have oxygen. But we would get really cold in a big, big hurry. You remove all CO2 out of the atmosphere, and the oceans are going to freeze.
Peter, we're going to take a short break and come back and take final calls with you in a moment on Coast to Coast AM.
Sign up now for Coast Zone, our free email newsletter. Get it today at coasttocoastam.com.
To win your way to our 2023 iHeartRadio Music